Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Odds and Audibles podcast. I'm your host, Jared Mack, and with me today is our lovely intern here at duckterritory.com, Austin Ota. Austin, how you feeling today, man?
Doing good. It's first weekend of the NCAA tournament. I love college baseball. I love this part in college baseball in the college baseball season. So it's exciting. I'm excited to watch some new faces in Eugene this weekend.
Yeah, and that's going to be our podcast discussion for today. We're going to be talking about the Eugene Regional and the number 12 seeded Oregon Ducks as the host. Welcoming them in, three new teams to Eugene. Well, two new teams. Arizona has been here a couple times, but that was the Pac-12. We are now in the Big Ten. So the Eugene Regional, obviously Oregon as the host here at 42-14. They welcome Utah Valley, Cal Poly, and Arizona for this first weekend of the NCAA tournament beginning Friday, May 30th. Oregon's first pitch is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Friday, May 30th. For those who are interested, you can definitely go to PK Park and try to catch that. I know tickets are going pretty fast, it seems like, from talking to people on message boards and some social media commentary as well. So if you do plan on going, I want to look into buying tickets right now. But first up, I kind of want to go into Oregon's first opponent here in Utah Valley. What do you think, Austin? You think we should go there first, or do a little Oregon breakdown?
It's a good start. Well, what do you? It's your show.
I guess a little bit. I'm gonna go jump into Utah Valley. This will be
Let's do it.
Oregon's first opponent here on Friday. Again, 6 p.m. first pitch. These are the WAC tournament champions coming in at 32-27 overall, a 13-11 conference record during a regular season. What will be a theme throughout this entire podcast, I think, is this is an offensive heavy ball club. Their pitching is not so great. We'll get to that in a second, but this is a really good team offensively, if I'm going to be honest with you, at least just looking at the stats. And I'll be completely transparent with everybody who's listening. I've not watched a lot of Utah Valley baseball this year. And I think that's probably the case with most Oregon fans, unless you're living out in Orem and you're watching all these games live in person, and you're somehow still an Oregon fan. Basically, everybody in their lineup that is important, that is starting 35, 40 games a year or playing in, has an OPS above 800. And that could be kind of worrisome when you get into one of these NCAA tournaments, especially in the regional field where, things are kind of quirky. That's been Oregon's MO the last couple of seasons, where pitching hasn't been great, but their offense has been spectacular. And that's helped them go 2-0 in regionals in the last two seasons, the Nashville and then Santa Barbara last year. They're led by Jaden Smith, who's hitting just under 400, 398 average, 506 on base, 515 slugging. He's got 78 hits this season, 15 doubles, 0 home runs, surprisingly, but has a 1.021 OPS, and has only struck out 27 times this year compared to 39 strikeouts, 27 walks this year. Yeah, sorry, I had those backwards. He's one of their best hitters, but I think the Mason Strong as the infielder is probably their best hitter, if I'm being honest. 376 average, 442 on base, 633 slug, 85 hits, which is very impressive. That would be the single season record holder at Oregon, beating out Drew Cowley by 2 hits, but 11 tanks, 64 RBIs. Those are the two-headed monster here, and I'll bring up Utah Valley's stats here on the screen in a second, but this is a really good offensive club, and that's going to be a huge test in the first game for Oregon, and something that might impact who they decide to throw in game one. I think they should throw Grayson, but with this type of stats that they have out there, I think getting a win in game one is going to be really important, especially with PK Park being pretty hitter friendly. It's not the most hitter friendly in the country, but it's up there.
Depends on who you ask. I was actually going to bring up the whole. I was going to bring up the whole park factor thing, which I think is in question. But I went into the park factor in my most recent article, and Oregon is, according to run environment, which I think is weighted on last year's stat or the stats of the last couple of years for a team at home versus away. It's technically a pitcher park, but that's one of those like, okay, are the analytics really telling the truth here? Because I don't think there's any way you can go to PK and say that it's a pitcher friendly park with how many runs are scored there.
Yeah.
I digress. Yeah, it's a great offense, and I think it's something you'll notice with a lot of these WAC teams. It's a very high offensive environment, and I think because of that, I think Utah Valley's pitching is probably a little better than it appears on paper. Do we want to talk about the pitching separately, or do you want me to talk some more about the bats?
Let's go bats for just a little bit more, but
Sure.
I'm glad you brought up the fact that they're playing in Utah and Orem at elevation for the pitching staff,
Right.
and that kind of hurts their overall stats.
Yeah. Back to the bats. I mean, you didn't touch on their two biggest power hitters. Luke Iverson is, I think, a really good player. He leads the team with 16 homers. He also has 12 steals. It's a team that runs a lot. So I think battery-wise, Oregon should start Grayson Grinsell and Chase Meggers on Friday. Chase, I think, has one of the best arms, not even in terms of arm strength, just quick releases. And Grayson is great at holding runners on. He's second in Oregon history in pickoffs, both single season and career, behind Petey, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's right. It's one of the it's behind Anderson, who has done so in MLB as well. But I mean, there's a ton of offense on this team. It's very, very powerful. They run a lot as well. Dom Longo, another really fun player, 20 steals, 10 homers as well. I don't have the exact number on it, but it's not often you see a 20-10 guy in college baseball. 20 steals, 10 homers. Usually they're a little more like stolen base focused or power focused.
Yep.
But it's like you mentioned, everyone 1 through 11 in this lineup has an OPS of about 800. Even their worst hitter OPS wise, DJ Massey, has a 799 OPS. Like he's still a really good player, and he's hitting 330. Right.
Yeah.
Stolen 10 bases. He has 12 doubles. Like that's a good year, right? That's to some level simply on an offensive scale what Carter Garada has done this year for Oregon, in terms of the on base and slugging, and the doubles department. But I think the huge run environment of the WAC is kind of a two-headed sword, because it's, or a double-edged sword, excuse me, because it's, yes, the offensive numbers are going to look kind of bumped up for this team, but I also think that especially when you get to postseason play in college baseball, and we've seen this, I'm not going to compare this team to Oral Roberts that came in, which you and I have both said is the greatest team we've ever seen at the collegiate level. Yeah. But teams that are old like this, one thing you notice when looking through the class of all these guys, it's a lot of seniors, a lot of juniors, a lot of grad students. And I am a firm believer that just experience wins in college baseball. And this is a relatively young regional. Oregon, for all of its success in the regular season, is still pretty young. And yes, they've had guys that have come back for back-to-back seasons in a super regional, but Cole Stokes has pitched an inning in a super regional. Seth Maddox hasn't pitched in a super regional. A lot of the arms, especially the back end of the bullpen, and then the starting pitching outside of Grayson Grinsell. Ian Umlau's thrown an inning in 2/3, threw an inning in 2/3 against Oral Roberts a couple years ago. It was good, but there's some inexperience, especially in the arms outside of Grayson Grinsell for the Ducks at this level. So I think that'll be just something to monitor against how good and how experienced these bats are.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be another point of mine, is just how old this team is for Utah Valley. Like you said, and like those who are watching the podcast and can see on the screen, I hope, they're just littered with juniors and seniors. And to Austin's point, like that's really hopeful in postseason baseball at the end of the day. And you kind of saw, if you've been an Oregon baseball watcher for the last couple of seasons, you saw some of that youth come into play during their super regional run against Oral Roberts, where game 3, when they're starting pitching, when their older guys were done and they couldn't come back into the game, or there were injuries or whatever, the younger guys faltered in the latter half of the game, and Oral Roberts took advantage of that with guys like Jonah Cox and who was a tremendous bat. And that's going to be really big for Oregon this year. It's just trying to get these guys to live up to these moments as part of the younger group. And the three, you mentioned Stokes and Maddox, but the three-headed monster, or the three-headed group of people that they've been using the last couple of weeks to help solidify their bullpen, and Stokes, Maddox, and Santiago Garcia, all of those guys are basically really new to the team this year. Obviously, Stokes was on the team last year, but didn't have a real role like he does this year. But Garcia and Maddox are new. Toby Twist has kind of emerged as somebody that Oregon is trying to get into the back end of the bullpen. But again, he's made 4 appearances, I believe it is now, after going out against Nebraska on, what was that, Saturday? I believe it was Saturday morning. Yeah. So there's a lot of inexperience there, and a lot of experience on Utah Valley's on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm also glad you brought up the running game too for Utah Valley. Like, they have, most of their starting 9 has 10 or more steals this year. 21 obviously is a high mark by Longo that you mentioned, but they like to run, and that's what this team is kind of built on. They didn't perform great during the regular season, like I said, just a 13-11 conference record, but in the WAC postseason tournament, they beat Abilene Christian and Sacramento State. I think Sacramento State twice in order to go on and win the chip there. So, and Sacramento State was, until that weekend, was projected to be a 3 seed in most places, and probably coming out to the Eugene Regional or the Corvallis Regional because of their West Coast. But that was a good team that they beat in Sacramento State. And Abilene Christian was another team that was hoping to steal a bid, but it ended up being this Utah Valley team that offensively just wiped the floor with people during the conference tournament. So I think it's a big first test, and that's why I would throw Grayson, like we talked about, and Meggers too behind the dish. Even though I think Berkeley Mabius has gotten a lot better behind the dish, I think Meggers is still the best defensive catcher on the team, and his ability to throw out base runners at the clip that he does is going to be incredibly important as long as there's runners on base, which, given the stats for everybody, I know I mentioned that as an 800 OPS for everybody. Almost everybody in the starting 9 or starting 10 basically has a 400 on base percentage as well. They get on base, they draw walks, they hit singles. There's plenty of long ball threat. Maybe that's a little altitude adjusted, but guys aren't hitting 16 home runs a pop randomly. There's real pop in those bats. So this is going to be formidable of an offensive opponent going into the first game.
And for me, it's a program that I've actually, believe it or not, followed a bit over the last couple of years.
Wow.
It was kind of a crawdad feeder in theory for a while.
Okay.
And so Eddie Smith was the coach the last couple of years, and of course he's now at Washington. And the job that Nate Rasmussen and his staff have done this year at Utah Valley with bringing in that power, because it was a good offensive team. The Dickinson kid from LSU was there for a couple of years. It was a really good offensive team in a really good offensive environment. But the jumps that you see guys making this year, where CJ Collier was a D3 NAIA guy the last couple of years from Pacific. So that's D3, right? And he had a lot of power there, but the on-base skills transferring from the D3 to the D1 level is impressive. A guy like Jaden Smith, who was didn't have a ton of power. Luke Iverson had 3 to 4 home runs the last couple of years. These are all guys that have taken leaps up this year, and that to me is the most impressive part.
Collier has an interesting walk to strikeout ratio. It's 9-39, but he's still getting on base at a 40% clip. It's actually genuinely impressive.
How does that even work?
I don't know,
he's
man.
Only been hit by 6 pitches.
Yeah, he's got 37 hits in 36 games, so he's getting on base, but 9-39, that's not exactly what I would do. I hate to say it.
You've seen the hit by pitch ledger for Luke Iverson?
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, 29 has got to be up there in the NCAA leaderboards, right? You want to do a quick little goog? Thank you. While you look that up, I'm going to scroll down here to the pitching staff, which I will sort by innings pitched, because that's what I like to do the most.
Good.
You got a number on that?
He is tied for 4th nationally.
Golly. Who
With
leads
names, the league leader is a name we've seen this year. It's Chuck Shulvin from Toledo,
Oh, really? Big Chuck.
shortstop. The 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 power conference leader is Kyle Wolf of Boston College. Shout out Boston.
Shout out BC.
Yeah.
Man, they had a great tournament run. Just didn't.
They did. It was a fun one. Shout out that one guy that threw 800
Oh,
pitches.
AJ. Yeah.
Yeah.
100 and I think it was like 168 pitches in 4 days.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some names that we've seen on this list. Tanner Griffith of St. Mary's fame, Colton Bauer of Washington fame.
It's a great name, Colton Bauer.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
yeah. Before we go down and start naming dudes for the next hour, Utah Valley pitching staff not great. I'm going to be frank, but again, there's some. Hey, they played at a lot of elevation this year. I'm actually going to double check that and make sure that like I'm not just FOS.
It'd be really funny if we went through the first 16 minutes and 20 seconds of the podcast being like, they play at a really pitcher.
It's high. It's 4,700 feet in the air. It's higher than Salt Lake and Provo, so that's legit. It's no Denver. In case you didn't know, Denver is a mile above sea level, as they have in their jerseys and everything. But pitching overall is not the strongest suit for this team. Yes, Austin.
I will also add in that the park factor of Utah Valley, per the site that I used for my article, is 125 over the last 3 years.
Yikes.
128 over the last 6. So I mean it's 28% better to hit than an average baseball field.
Yeah,
the ball flies.
Nice. Ball flies, and their pitching numbers reflect that because as a team they have a 6.44 ERA and just over 500 innings. It's not what you want. Oregon, for reference, I think it was at 3.95, I believe, the last time I checked, which is really good. And I believe top 10, top 15 in the nation in terms of club ERA, which is, again, really impressive for the Ducks. But the other side of it is the opponent's ERA against Utah Valley is 7.93. So that gives you any indication these are high-scoring games going on in the WAC between Utah Valley and their opponents. But look, they're probably going to throw out Corbin Kirk, who is at the top of this list. If you're watching, we got people over there, Austin.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Anyways, Corbin Kirk, 15 games started. He's got 74 innings pitched, 5.69 ERA. He is basically objectively their best pitcher on the team as a starter, to be clear, and still doesn't have the best numbers in the world. He's given up 90 hits over those 74 innings. He's walked 29 guys, only 66 strikeouts. Colton Kennedy is another guy that they could start, 75 strikeouts and 68.1 innings pitched. But this is not – when Oregon plays Utah Valley on Friday, I would not expect a 2 or 3-1 ball game in favor of either team. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. And this is, like you mentioned, Austin, this is very Oral Roberts-y, where the pitching is okay for the opposing team, but the hitting is really where the bread and butter is. And that's where they're going to have to shine in this Eugene Regional, is putting up 8 to 10 runs a game and just trying to go through pitchers and ruin the chances of the other teams moving forward by having them use 7 to 8 guys. But this is going to be an interesting one for Utah Valley because their best arm, which is their reliever, Cooper Littledyke, which is just one of the worst names you could possibly have. No disrespect to Cooper, but he's been really good this year. He's 27 innings pitched, 2.67 ERA. He's basically 1 to 3 innings at a time. I think he's only cracked the 3-inning threshold once or twice this season, which is fine, but they're going to need him to pitch lights out because their other relievers are, Karsten Herman, who's got a 6.02 ERA and 55.1 innings pitched. This is very similar. This makes me feel a lot like those 2022, 2023 Oregon teams where there's just nobody you can really turn to in the bullpen. And, well, that's a lie. There were a couple guys, but you had to get from the first inning to the seventh inning before you could turn to the guys that you really trust in the back end. And that seems like a little similar of a situation here with Utah Valley. But again, park factors, maybe this is a better pitching staff than what's on paper. I'm not the resident Utah Valley expert, unlike yourself, Austin, but this is on paper. This seems like it's going to be just high scoring affairs game after game here.
Yeah, what I will say is I think the Utah Valley pitching is on a little bit of a heater. I think that if you look at their WAC tournament play, it's not
They did
exactly
throw a no
easy.
hitter, right?
I didn't even see that. Is that true?
Let me double check this because I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they did against Sac State.
Yeah,
that's totally on me for not noticing that. They did in fact throw a no hitter. But if you look at Hohokam Stadium, not one I'm familiar with, nor am I familiar with its park factor, but I would not assume that it's exactly an easy place to pitch. But they threw pretty well, right? Gave up 7 in the opener to UT Arlington. It's a good UTA offense, another crawdad feeder. But then giving up just 1 to Abilene Christian, 1 to Sac State when you're using your 2 biggest weekend guys, because against Arlington they threw I think their Sunday guy Hepner. And so I think when if you throw your first 2 guys, those are good offenses. Sac State, like you said, was running away with the WAC through the regular season. Then they got no hit. And to beat number 2 Abilene Christian twice, to beat number 1 Sac State once, you have to do something good in that series. And for a big part of it was pitching. I think that a lot of these numbers are a little skewed. It's still a team offense that's below league average for their league. Where can you guess what the Western Athletic Conference league ERA is?
6.84.
609.
Okay.
Yeah, so not great. But I agree. It feels kind of like those 2022-23 Oregon teams where it was just like, all right, here's the next 6 walks per 9 guy. But shout out Blake Hawksworth for teaching strikes.
Shout out Blake Hawksworth, yeah.
I do think it's different pitching wise because that Oral Roberts team could pitch.
Yeah, they had good back end guys too.
Yeah, that was a really good baseball team. But all that to say, the big worrisome thing for me looking at this pitching staff in terms of if you're a Utah Valley fan is it's just not a high strikeout team. And you're gonna have to get strikeouts against a team like Oregon. Oregon's strength with ball and play luck is real. You're not going to be able to get 27 outs while only striking out 4 or 5 guys against this Oregon team.
No. And that's how Oregon has lost a lot this year. There's double-digit strikeout numbers,
right?
12, 14, whatever the case is. Or they play in Omaha where the field is ginormous and it's just more opportunities.
At 7 a.m.
Right. 9 a.m. local time, but I digress. Yeah. They're going to need to miss bats. And Oregon, I had this number up earlier. Oregon, I believe, is 28-5 or something like that at home this year. So it's not.
That checks out.
This is certainly a home field advantage for the Ducks. I'm going to pull it up on screen right now because I forgot the number off the top of my head. Oh no, I went to the wrong tab. Womp womp. But this is going to be a real home field advantage for the Ducks.
28-8 at home.
Thank you. So I had the 28 part right. Cool. Anyways, but yeah, this is going to be a fun opener. Again, 6 p.m. on a Friday afternoon on May 30th for the Ducks opening the Eugene Regional here. Do we want to move on to Cal Poly or?
Yeah, let's do Cal Poly just because I think people are more familiar with Arizona.
Yeah, we'll get into that later, but this is an interesting Arizona team this year. Not really sure how I feel about them.
It's certainly a team.
It's certainly a team. Anyways, we're going to discuss Cal Poly here, who were also the Big West champions, won their conference tournament in stunning fashion. They were not expected to win that all, but had to take down Irvine, I believe, twice in the tournament, lost their first game to Irvine, and then won the last two to secure the conference title. 41-17 overall record, 23-7 in the Big West. This is one of the better teams in the West Coast, as far as I'm concerned. This is a pitching staff, which we'll get into. Let's go pitching staff first, howbeit
Deal.
after we started with offense for Utah Valley. I think the pitching staff is the thing to talk about here, if I'm being honest. They have some high leverage arms in the bullpen, which I think could cause Oregon a lot of problems in later innings if they do end up playing this team. We should mention that Cal Poly and Arizona are on the other side of the bracket, or the regional, I should say, the regional bracket. And Oregon, if they win game one against Utah Valley, will play the winner. So they're either going to play Cal Poly or Arizona. There's a chance they play both of them regardless. But I think the back end of the bullpen,
it's so good.
So good. They've got four guys who I will bring up at the top of the screen here. Josh Morano, Christopher Downs, Jake Torres, and Tanner Sugosby. I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I'm terribly sorry, Tanner, if you're listening. Those four guys all have 17 or more appearances with ERAs below 4 and are just workhorses for this Cal Poly team or I should say Mustangs for this Cal Poly team. Because their starting pitching hasn't been the best this year, outside of Griffin Ness, or Nace, however you pronounce that.
We're off to a good start with the pronunciation game here.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm world-class pronunciator, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But anyways, these guys are really good. And if I had a back end of the bullpen like this, I feel like I could beat almost anybody in the nation as long as my offense is pretty good. 3 left-handed relievers, too. I didn't write down which specific ones they are, but 3 left-handed relievers in that quartet. And as we know this season, left-handed pitchers have given Oregon some struggles on the road, at home, neutral site, whatever the case may be. They've given Oregon some troubles. The one thing I will say about that core 4 is the strikeout numbers, other than for Tanner, aren't really there. We're 48 innings, 33 strikeouts, 55 innings, 37 strikeouts, 41 innings, 32 strikeouts. This goes back to your batted balls in play with Utah Valley. You're going to need to generate some more strikeouts here against Oregon. But still, I think the pitching staff is, not to say that the offense is bad, but I think the pitching staff is the strength here for Cal Poly.
No, I agree. We're like 2 for 2 on teams that I've followed a lot for weird reasons. Cal Poly is a team that I've followed a lot for the last couple of years. And the growth that the program has had since Brooksley left in 2022.
Shout out Brooksley.
Shout out, good baseball player. Just a baseball guy. But the growth that the program has had since he left in 2022 to being one of the worst teams in the nation in 2023, to surprising people last year by being above average, to being legitimately really good this year is awesome. It's what college baseball is about, right? It's a team that is hit by the portal more than it's helped by the portal. It's a team that has kind of just been hit from every angle and yet still finds a way to win in a really, really good conference. I would argue that before the West Coast teams got into the Big Ten, the Big West was probably better than the Big Ten. You look at teams like UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara. There are fantastic teams in this conference. And for Cal Poly to go in and win the conference tournament this year and end the year on a heater, I mean, it's such a cliche, and I know I said it already, but it is what college baseball is all about at its roots.
Mm-hmm.
The pitching is really good. They're starting pitching outside of Ness. We're going to go with Nace or Ness?
Well, this is the pronunciation podcast, so you can go with whatever you'd like.
Let's just call him Griff.
Griff.
Outside of Griff, has not been great on paper, but again, pretty good run environment in the Big West. The league average ERA there is 5.7. So if you're going out and Ethan Marmee, a 5.1 ERA in 70 innings, that's, I don't know how many innings per start is that. It's about a little under 5 innings per start, about 5 innings to start. It's 5 innings of 2 to 3 run baseball. That's great. With that back end of the bullpen, Josh Fulmerding, you can kind of say the same thing. And with him, I think his ERA is kind of misleading because the strikeouts are high, the walks are pretty low, and the home run rate is low. And to me, that screams some ball and play bad luck against him. So I wouldn't write off their starting pitching because they have 3 true starters. The only time for me in a postseason setting where you can really just kind of discredit starting pitching is when it's non-existent, right? You look back to that 2023 Oregon team where it was like, okay, they are going to have to piece together 9 innings. I don't think this team has to piece together 9 innings. I think this team has to put together 4 or 5 a game after Griffin Ness, who's going to give you 6 in game 1, and they're going to be probably 6 good innings. And with, like you said, the bullpen, like Chris Downs is basically a 4th starter with how many innings he's thrown. This is a guy that averages over 2 innings an appearance. Same with Jake Torres. Same with T. Sags and Josh Morano. Like all of these guys are giving you 2 innings a game. It's a recipe for success at the college level. And I think, Kalfspeak and Cooper, they'll eat up innings. If you're down or up in a ball game big, they'll give you innings to eat. And I think those guys are important as well. It's a really good pitching staff. The strikeout numbers aren't there, but they also just don't walk guys. 3.4 walks per 9 for a team, for a college team is fantastic. So, that park is also big. So the hits are always going to be high. But I don't know. I think this team could surprise some people.
Oregon and Cal Poly are my favorites for the Eugene Regional. I think that those teams are far and away the best 2 of the group. And we'll get to Arizona in a second. But in postseason baseball, like having a good old pitching staff that understands their role and guys who can eat innings, like you mentioned, where let's say Oregon and Cal Poly meet in game 2 and Cal Poly throws their Saturday or Sunday starter and he can only get you 3 innings because he's had 75 pitches and has allowed 4 or 5 runs and you're down 5-2, let's say. They've got guys who, if they didn't throw in game 1, or frankly, even if they did throw in game 1, who can go out there and get the next 4 innings and bring you to the 7th, bring you to the 8th, and keep the game 6-3, 7-4, something like that, where you're within striking distance. And that's huge. You cannot let leads get out of hand in the postseason. And that's kind of what's happened to Oregon the last couple of years where, they've brought in relief guys and they've been up by 1 or 2 runs and suddenly they're down by 1 or 2 runs and then they're down by 3 or 4 runs. And that's what Cal Poly is so good at, is they can bring in guys and say, hey, look, we need 4 or 5 innings out of you today. We're not going to throw you tomorrow, so don't worry. Give us, 70 pitches out of the bullpen, and they can go do it. And they have multiple guys who can. I think that's incredibly important. And then they're going to be playing this Arizona team again that we'll get to, but who I don't know. I don't know if they're all that in a bag of chips, but I digress. Let's hit the offense real quick here with Cal Poly. Again, not like this is a bad offensive team, as you can see from Zach Daudet's numbers, where he's hitting 371 with 7 tanks and 63 hits over 49 games, and they've got a lot of offensive talent. I wouldn't say, like, on paper it doesn't look as good as Utah Valley's numbers, but again, they're playing in a much more difficult conference with UCI and Cal State Fullerton and UC Santa Barbara and all these other teams that are frankly known for their pitching in the last couple of years and draft cycles and everything. But again, I think this is still a lineup that is dangerous and cannot be taken lightly. And kept it really clutch in the conference tournament there at the end, where they're going against guys who are going to be high. I mean, Tyler Bremner is in that conference. He's going to be a top 15 pick in the country. They're going to be going against real MLB talent there. So again, I think this is a real solid lineup, but one that may not look like it on paper, but one that can do plenty of damage if given the right opportunities.
Yeah, I would say it's It's a real strength of this team. I think you might be underselling it a little bit. I think it's a really. I mean, it finished third in the conference in OPS, led the conference far and away in batting average. Larry Lee, really good coach, but he's an old school coach, so he's going to focus a little more on that batting average side than the walks numbers, which is why you'll see the walk isn't extremely high for the team. But I think that could be something that helps the Stangs, because Oregon's pitching staff is not a staff that walks a lot of guys. You're going to need some ball and play luck. You're not going to be able to just work them deep into counts and hope for ball four. You're going to need to put up good quality at bats that end with a ball in play. I think it's a good offensive team. Zach Daudet, CCL guy, really good player. For me, the biggest tell in what they've done from last year to this year is Braxton Thomas has 66 at bats this year, and he was like one of their dudes last year. He had 5 homers for them. Like he was close to an everyday guy, and they're pushing these guys that were big pieces in a good team last year just out of the lineup because of how much some of their guys have improved. It's another pretty old team. You're not going to see any big time freshmen get huge playing time, and I think that will help them.
Probably undersold them a hair, just because of the gaudy numbers that a Utah Valley can put up.
Yeah.
And mean, we cover Oregon baseball, and every year there's a ton of gaudy numbers that this team has put up. And so I'm probably a little spoiled in that regard in terms of judging offenses, because it's like, well, Oregon did this. And
you only have an 863 OPS?
Yeah, like I'm upset at Carter Garrotti at like an 801 OPS. I'm like, man, this guy, what are we doing here? It's like, no, that's good. That's above average. Like, oh, okay, whatever. This is my, not a sleeper, but this is my, like, I think Oregon should win this regional. I think it's a pretty favorable draw for the Ducks, if I'm being honest, as the 12 seed here. But if a team were to upset Oregon, I think it's got to be Cal Poly. I mean, I really like this stuff.
I don't really think it's close. I think for me, it's like Oregon get a little bit of a drop for Cal Poly. I think they're a really good quality baseball team. And then I think there's like a pretty decent drop from them to Arizona and Utah Valley. Like I'm not that high on this Arizona team. I know they had big preseason expectations. I know they kind of came out of nowhere and I think won the pack last year, the regular season. But I don't know. I'm just maybe it's because I just dislike the institution, and so I'm a little biased against them always. But I don't know. I don't think they're great.
I don't think they're great either. Which is great because we're going to take a break and then come back and talk about Arizona on this edition of the Odds and Audibles podcast. So bear with us. We'll be right back. All right. We are back here on the Odds and Audibles podcast. Again, I am your host, Jared Mack, joined with me by Austin Ota, who just talked his way out of a parking ticket. How'd that go?
I went down. I said, hey, I just parked here like 30 minutes ago. Not the truth. Can you let me off the hook? And he said, well, our system reads that you've been in the area for more than 2 hours. And I was like, oh, I just moved on this block. I'm so sorry about that. Not the truth. And he said, well, you're good for today. I was like, all right, thank you so much, man. So,
that's some smooth.
Hopefully he's not watching this.
No, he would never. I
don't think so.
I don't know who is watching this right now, but in the meantime, during that break, I also killed a spider. So that's first big ups for me. Not a big spider person, but
do you know I have an EpiPen for a spider allergy?
You do? Interesting.
I do.
Wow. So you're don't like spiders more than me, I would imagine.
Yeah, not particularly a spider guy.
Okay, that's fair. I don't think any of us should be, but
no.
If you're listening out there and have arachnophobia, let us know in the comments below. Because apparently that's what we have as we go in and talk about the third and final team that's coming to Eugene this weekend. The number 2 seeded Arizona Wildcats, the Big 12 tournament champions, taking down, as you can see on the screen, BYU, West Virginia, and Texas Christian, also known as TCU, in the championship game and extra innings there to bring home the Big 12 title tournament. That's the second straight conference tournament that Arizona has won. The final year of the Pac-12, they won the tournament down there in Scottsdale, and then obviously this past season with the Big 12. So again, Arizona is 39-18, 18-12 overall. This was a team that, Austin was just mentioning before we took the break, came in with high expectations, started out pretty slow. I believe they lost their first 3 games. Yep. To some top 25 schools, and then Louisville, who was threatening to kind of make the tournament this year, they did, but was threatening to be maybe a host seed in the middle of the season and kind of fell off at the end. But this is still, I don't know how to feel about this team territory, as we've periodically mentioned throughout the 41 minutes that we've been talking here. I'm indifferent on how they do.
Yeah.
I think that this has some really high-end talent offensively, like with Mason White and Brendan Summerhill.
Good baseball player.
2 good baseball players. And can really do some damage there, but the rest of their lineup doesn't necessarily strike fear into me, or probably into a lot of people, and their pitching staff is another question mark. I do think that their pitching staff we should start with again, because I think that that's probably the strength of this team going into the
just in
NCAA
terms of
tournament.
depth, I agree.
Yeah, and I feel like their offense is pretty top heavy, and if you can neutralize those threats out of the top or the middle of their order, I think you're going to have a good day at the office if you're the opposing team. But pitching wise, I think that this is the strength of this team, and I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do in the postseason in terms of like who's going to be their starters, because they have a chance to roll out a bullpen arm and try to go multiple innings with him, and then maybe follow him up with a starter and try to get 2 innings out of them, just because they've had some inconsistencies there in the starting staff. But I still think that a guy like Smith Bailey is a true freshman, or Colin Kinney, guys who have both made 13 or more starts this season, can lead a postseason run for the Wildcats. I'm just more interested about their bullpen that has a bunch of dudes who can really help along the stretch. I don't think it's as impressive as Cal Poly's bullpen guys, but I think it's still a really good start, and it's something that you have to have if you're going to go far in the postseason.
Yeah, I think the bullpen's legit. It just, I don't know. For me, it's just more inning eaters than quality inning eaters. I think Tony Pluta is really good. The numbers don't lie with him. He's walked 5 guys all year like that. He's really good. If you get to the 9th inning and Arizona's up, all right, it might be over. Yeah. Tongini, really fun player. I like 41 strikeouts in 23 innings. I mean, that's their Cole Stokes, right? Like that's Cole Stokes with a little more veteranness, a little more experience. He's on his 3rd school in 4 years. Like he's a good player. But the 2 guys that have eaten up innings out of the bullpen for them, Heinz and Hicks, I don't think either of them are terrific. Both of them have big strikeout numbers, and neither of them have walked a ton of guys, which is, generally a recipe for success. I don't know. Just they're both good quality college innings eaters. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't feel like there's any like real high end talent, especially on the pitching staff. There's a couple outside of those 2, Pluta and Tongini, I think are really good, but like true freshmen starting in a regional scenario, it just scares me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's kind of what I was thinking too, where if you're throwing Smith Bailey, a true freshman, and it's not that we haven't seen true freshmen come to life on this national stage in the NCAA tournament before. It happens really every year, and it might be a year for Smith Bailey here, but there is some concern there, and then it's just not going to be like a normal regular season week. You're going to have really high leverage innings and really high leverage pitches, and it's going to be more taxing on a bullpen. And if they get into a dogfight with Cal Poly in game 1, that's going to hurt down the line. And again, I think that this staff is pretty good. You mentioned the walk rate. There's really only Colin McKinney who is throwing more walks than he really should. But again, he's a starter. But again, 34 and 53 is not ideal. Like a guy like Raul Garazar, I mean,
He's their
53
Unamon.
innings. Yeah, 53 innings, 2.18 ERA, 15 walks. Like opponents are only hitting 218, as you can see off the screen there in front of you if you're watching. Like that's going to help, and that might help in keeping a game close. That might help in a blowout win when they're like, "Hey, we want to rest everybody. Can you give us 4 innings?" Like that's huge for them. And like you said,
Right.
Austin, that's like kind of Ian Umlant's pseudo role. It's kind of changed here in the last couple of weeks, but
True.
if you can get that, that's huge. But I don't know. I don't know with this team. And again, they've got a good record. They're 39 wins in the season. They're 21 games above 500. They're just coming off a conference tournament championship. I just think TCU is the much better Big 12 team, if I'm going to be honest. Of the teams that I've watched this year, and I've watched way more Power 4 conference schools than the Big West, than the WAC. And I've watched plenty of Arizona games, and I've watched plenty of TCU games, and I just think TCU is the better program. And Oregon State has them as the 2 seed in their tournament, and Oregon has Arizona as the 2 seed. And if I'm either Oregon or Oregon State, I would much rather play Arizona than TCU. And
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's a good thing for Oregon. I think the second best team in this regional is, to me, very clearly Cal Poly. And I could be very wrong here. And if there's an Arizona fan listening, I am sure I will hear it from them. But I just like Cal Poly a lot more. And we can move in the offense here for Arizona. And like we were saying, it's a little top heavy with Walton, White, and Summerhill leading the charge. Again, High Corbett Field in Tucson is pretty hitter friendly, if I remember correctly. Just from the years of watching Arizona in the Pac-12, it's always like, yeah, this team can rake, and when other teams go there, they can also rake. But again, they're going into PK and have the chance. They have the talent. This is a very historically well-documented, good program for national championships. Like, this is a good program here. I just don't love this team as much as I've liked other Arizona teams in the past.
No, you know who I really like though?
Who?
Owen Kramkowski.
Owen, welcome.
Really good. His run prevention numbers as they stand right now, like a 5.03 ERA isn't great. It's not bad for college baseball. It's pretty good. I know we already touched on the pitching, but as you've been yapping, I've kind of been looking into him more.
Yapping?
In a good way. Yapping is not always
not
a bad
derogatory.
thing. No. He has the same FIP as Grayson Grinsell. So, their ERAs are about, 2.5, 3 runs off. But he's got a 3.8 FIP. Like, he's a good pitcher. I don't know. I think he should be their game 1 starter. I think Smith Bailey has fewer strikeouts, more walks, and more home runs allowed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I felt like I had to get that in. Colin McKinney's pretty good too. The walks are high, but I mean
that's the only problem.
That's your freshman Grayson Grinsell, right? He also hasn't allowed a home run. So
yeah, 147 WHIP on McKinney, which isn't ideal, if I'm going to be honest.
No. What are your thoughts on? This is kind of a tangent.
6.36 xFIP too. So.
Ooh. Yeah, okay, maybe not then. I think hit by pitches should be included in WHIP.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's just how many base runners do you allow in an inning?
Right. And McKinney's WHIP would be even higher considering he's also hit 13 batters. Anyway, should we move to the offense?
Yeah, that'd be great. That's what I was trying to do in the first place, but
Yeah, my bad. I just had to yap.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah. Go ahead on the offense because I digressed already.
Yeah, Mason White's really good. I mean, he's been good. He's one of the
Thanks.
better players
Yeah.
in the nation. He's a really good player. Brendan Summerhill, really good. Aaron
Yeah.
Walton, fine.
Big Brennan Summerhill guy.
But then, like, once you get past the top three, it's just boom, right? You go from a 984 OPS in Walton to an 876 OPS in Adonis Guzman, who I just don't think is that good. We've seen him play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's that good. Maddox, not Maloney, Maddox M.
Seth.
Whose name I can right, whose name I can never pronounce. Another guy that like we've seen him play. Is he that good? Garen Caulfield, same way.
Wow, Garen Caulfield's still on this team. That's crazy.
I know, right? Easton Breyfogle, I feel like he's been on this team for 8 years.
Yeah.
And yes, we talked about the veterans of the. There's no way this is only Easton Breyfogle's second year. Sorry. We talked about the veterans on Utah Valley. I just think it's almost different at the Power 4 level. Where like sometimes I do think if you are a veteran at the Power 4 level, like I don't know, you learn to hit obviously, but I don't think it brings the same experience level as it does at a lower level. I don't know if that makes any sense, but to me it kind of does.
Okay. I'm not going to say that you're that you're right or wrong here, in terms of the sentiment you just made, but no, I agree.
Hey, Tommy's playing though. Pride of Los Gatos, California.
Shout out Northern California. We love Northern California on this podcast.
Shout out my girlfriend. Went to the same high school.
Shout out Tommy. Anyways, yeah, if you're watching on the screen in front of us, I have this Arizona lineup sorted by WRC plus, and that basically is just Braden Summerhill's 164 WRC plus. That means he's 64% better than the average college hitter, and his stats check out. The eye test passes that. Like, I've seen him for years. He's a baller. Same with Mason White, but it very quickly drops off to a lot of sub 100 OPS plus, or WRC plus, where these are below average bats. And there's a lot of really important players for this Arizona team that are below average bats. And I will bring up the Oregon lineup to give people reference here, in terms of what we have seen every day for the last couple of years, and specifically with this team, where there are not a lot of below 100 OPS plus guys. Basically, everybody in the starting 9, except for Berkeley Mabius, is above 100. And it's kind of telling. And you can sit there with the eye test. And if Arizona is the team that Oregon plays in the second round of this Eugene Regional, I think Oregon probably heads into that Sunday with a 2-0 record. Again, we'll find out eventually. And, we could all be very wrong, and Arizona could sweep this tournament and go on a 5 or 6 game winning streak and get to the super regionals and get to Omaha one day.
Right. I do think this is either a team in Arizona that like flops in the first round or makes it to the College World Series.
Yeah, I just think I'm going to go back on my other points where I just think Cal Poly is better in terms of what I've watched. I like the eye test. I like the profiles. I like the team better. And I think TCU was the best team in the Big 12 this year. And I do not want to play them in a regional.
Over West Virginia?
I really like TCU this year. But West Virginia is right there as well. I think this is the third best team. Arizona is the third best team in the Big 12. And, that's after Arizona had to beat TCU and West Virginia to make it to the national or to the regional here in Eugene. I just think that they're the third best team in the Big 12. And if you're Oregon, I think you're pretty happy with this draw altogether. And you're pretty happy if you're really happy if it's Arizona in the second round of the Eugene Regional. You're less happy if it's Cal Poly. But
you're less happy if it's Arizona and it means that you lost to Utah Valley. Let's put it that way. Less happy if you lose to Utah Valley in the first round, no matter what.
Yeah.
But
you know what I mean?
Yeah, drink your water.
I like dudes who can hit, man. I don't know.
No, I do too. I agree. I think, like I said, I think it's a pretty severe drop from Cal Poly to Arizona.
Shout out Dom Hellman, 128 WRC plus, the GOAT. Let's do a little Oregon talk. This is a Oregon centric podcast on an Oregon centric website by two soon to be two graduates of the University of Oregon who, yeah, how you feeling, senior boy?
We don't have to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, we won't talk about that. Have fun with the job search. Anyways, Oregon, the number 1 seed in his regional, 42-14, 22-8 in the conference, won a share of the Big Ten regular season championship, went 1-1 in the Big Ten tournament. Stats are on the screen in front of you if you are watching. This is the number 1 seed for a reason. Number 12 seed overall, one of the 16 regional hosts, obviously did not make a top 8 seed for what I believe to be obvious reasons, but other people do not. And that's okay. We don't judge, but I think this is a wonderful spot for you. Might judge.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's not do that. This is a nice podcast. We can have fun here if we want. We can judge, and that's okay by me. But this is a very good team, and I think should be the overwhelming favorites to walk away and go to either Chapel Hill if North Carolina wins their regional, or potentially host a regional if another team other than UNC wins the Chapel Hill regional. Again, offensive, a great ball club offensively. Probably one of the better ones that we will see in the history of Oregon, led by Mason DeVille and Jacob Walsh, and just a bunch of dudes on this team. Shout out Ryan Cooney, 123 WRC plus, and the most WAR on the team, according to our dear friend Austin Ota.
Continue.
No, go ahead. Correct me.
No, I don't think it was most WAR. I think it was just most of the qualifiers for that exercise, which was anyone outside of the top 5 in ERA or in OPS. Mm-hmm. But yes, continue. Mason DeVille had like 8 WAR.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
Pretty good. I would say so. Anyways, yeah, I think I'm obviously have watched this team all season, covered it pretty well. There were some lower moments where you have to reel in people who may not know the same level of information and why this team is struggling that I do. And this team over the last 6 weeks has been what people expected it to be. Yeah. You know, winners of 15 of their last 17 games, 11-game win streak at one time, went 6-1 against Oregon State and UCLA, 2 other regional hosts. Oregon State is a top 8 seed, which means they could be a super regional host as well. This is a really good ball club that was coming around at the right time that I think got a little screwed by the Big Ten tournament and what transpired there, and both seeding and just rain, and that's, you know, some shit that you can't control, and that is what it is. I don't think this team heads into this tournament feeling any different than they did going into the Big Ten tournament. Like, I still feel like they are as confident as they were, and they kind of just chucked that Nebraska loss up to, oh well, shit happens. Again, yeah, I think that this is the clear favorite here in the Eugene Regional.
I just think it's the best Oregon team. I don't know if I can say ever, because I wasn't there in the mid-2010s when they were really good and making regionals, but like I think it might be the most talented Oregon team ever. I've kind of gone through the exercise of like, all right, who on this team is going to get drafted? And I think 1 through Chase Meggers, 1 through Berkeley Mabius. But then you look and you're like, okay, Jax Jimenez and Cohen Nikolai are both freshmen. Parker Stinton's got a track record. Like, there's so many guys just on the offense that are legit draft prospects. I don't know. I think that I understand why people kind of fell off the Oregon train for a bit in the middle of the season, but I also hope that those same people recognize how talented this team is and how impressive the coaching staff has been. I think that kind of goes unnoticed, is the changes that, specifically in my mind, the bullpen usage, the change in the bullpen usage has been impressive, because they're not throwing guys 2 or 3 innings anymore out of the bullpen for the most part. It's like kind of treated like a major league pitching staff, which is why I think they're winning games right now. And no one outside of Mason DeVille, who you kind of need to get going, no one is playing their worst baseball right now, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of guys playing their best baseball right now. I mean, Antoneros was awesome during the Big Ten tournament. I know it was only 2 games, but as was Dominic Hellman. Jacob Wallace has been an absolute heater since that week against Iowa. And honestly, he kind of started against Washington there in the final 2 games. Mason is the one guy that you're a little worried about, mostly because he hasn't sucked all season long until the last 2 weeks. And I don't know if that's so much more as what pitchers are doing to him in terms of throwing a lot of breaking balls early and late in the count and just not giving him a fastball to hit. And he's just not on time. But you and I have seen Mason destroy breaking ball pitches, and it just might be that he's in a slump. And it happened to come at an interesting time of the year where there are lots of things up for grabs, and he's just kind of stunk these last 2 weeks. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he just turns back into Mason DeVille, and because they're going against teams who don't have the same scouting reports. This is always the thing. This was the Jacob Walsh effect the last 2 seasons, where towards the end of the Pac-12 seasons, Jacob would get curveballs, sliders, changeups all down in the zone, and he would swing right through them. And once it hit postseason time and the tournament, and you would go to a regional where there's teams who are not in the Pac-12, they didn't know any better, and they would feed him fastballs. They try to beat him, and he just demolished them. And that's why he's been one of the better postseason performers. Walsh is a much better hitter than that now, and I'm wondering if that kind of translates into Mason, albeit he is the nation's home run leader and a Golden Spike semifinalist, so people should probably pay attention to him. But that's the one guy where you're hoping to get going. Everybody else is swinging a good stick, and I think this is the best offense in the Eugene Regional. And I think with the home field advantage, this could be really, really beneficial to what Oregon wants to do, and that's to take home the regional and potentially host the Supers.
Yeah, I got nothing. I think you covered everything. I think it's, as is usually the case with the hosting team, I think it's the best team in the regional.
Yeah. Okay, pitching.
Still a good pitching staff.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is the difference. Yeah.
I would say it's a great pitching staff. I think people have kind of set their expectations to like the late 2010s, where it's like, all right, you need 3 guys that have a sub-4 ERA in your starting rotation and 2 bullpen guys. And that's just not what college baseball is right now. Every year, you look at the guys throwing for, what was the game we were watching the other day? Was it Oklahoma?
Oh, in the SEC tournament? Yeah, I think it was like Oklahoma and Ole Miss or something like that.
Right. And
it was the Tennessee-Texas game.
It was whatever was after, because it was after the Oregon game that night.
Yeah.
But it was, I think it was Oklahoma, and it was their Saturday starter. You think Saturday starter, and for me, you go to like, all right, that's a 3.8 to 4 ERA, giving you about 60 to 65 innings, and that's a good Saturday starter for a team that wants to make the postseason. And no, it's a guy with like a 7.6 ERA, right? Like those guys, even your Friday guys outside of your Liam Doyles and your Jamie Arnolds, even your Friday guys have a 4 ERA, a 4.5 ERA, but are striking out 9 to 10 guys per inning or per 9, right? Like it's just not the same college baseball. And I think people have to be aware of that, where this Oregon pitching staff for a college baseball staff in a high run environment that is the Big Ten is elite. This is a truly very, very good pitching staff.
100%.
And I think the bullpen is peaking at the right time as well. That for me, I think there are 5 or 6 arms that I would really trust in a 2-run game.
Out of the bullpen?
Yeah.
Name them. I'm here.
Just in order of how they appear on this list: Umlaut, Featherston, Garcia, Stokes, Maddox, Jordan. And I think the Ducks are going to need guys like Julian Hernandez, Sam Boyle, Toby Twist to come through in big spots.
Yeah, 100%. This is what it's all about. Is you're playing your third game in 3 days, and you've thrown your 4 best guys the first 2 days. You need somebody to step up, and that's where Oregon hopes what they have in Toby Twist or Gabe Howard or Julian Hernandez or Sam Boyle, where they can come in and throw a shutout inning. And I think you're right that the bullpen is peaking at the right time. And I also think that a huge success for Oregon is the second half emergence of Jason Wrights as a full-time starter. Look, he's at 58.1 innings pitched, a 3.09 ERA. He's 5-0 this year. He's made 10 starts with a save, mind you. He has been,
I remember it like it was yesterday.
as you should. He has been excellent over the last couple of weeks. And this all kind of started, I think, personally, with a really gutsy, gritty performance against UCLA, where the first inning went okay, might have given up a run. The second inning was really ugly, and I think he threw 40 pitches, and Oregon was about to take him out. He had almost 60 pitches through 2 innings, and he told head coach Mark Wazakowski that to leave him in, and he ends up going 5 strong innings, gets the next 3 outs, and really has gone and had a lot of success since then. And the strikeout numbers aren't necessarily what I thought they would be going into the season. He's still, a K an inning, and that's still pretty good, but he has, given up on trying to find velocity and in a good way in terms of I'm going to throw 92 to 94 for strikes instead of trying to throw 95 to 98 out of the bullpen and try to just blow it by people. He's a real sinker, slider, changeup guy. And I think his growth on the mound as a full-time starter, where these are by far the best numbers of his entire career. He's cut down on the walks. He's cut down on allowing extra base hits. Opponents are only hitting 221 against him. Like, he's been excellent. And I think that has gone a long way for Oregon in terms of winning series, because he's been the Sunday guy and helping out the bullpen, because now when Will Sanford was the Sunday guy, your best bet was he was going to give you 4 or 5 innings. And then you had to figure out how to get the next 4 to 5 innings.
Right.
Wrights can give you 6 to 8 innings and do it efficiently and save your bullpen. And I think that's been another huge reason as to why this bullpen has gone from pretty terrible in the beginning of April to pretty darn reliable in the whole entire month of May. So good pitching staff, if I'm going to be honest here. And I'm with you on the 5 relievers that you mentioned earlier. Maybe not on Featherston, and I know that's a you thing, and you knew I was probably going to say that. But I still think it's a lot of good stuff. I really think they need Toby Twist or Sam Boyle to step up. They need a second lefty in that core 5 or 6 or whatever you want to call them, because lefty-lefty matchups are going to come a lot in the postseason tournament, and college lefty-lefty matchups are really clear splits. This lefty cannot hit lefties. Not as clear as the MLB, where you have plenty of left-handed hitters who can hit left-handed pitchers. Just more talented baseball players, fun fact. But they need one of those guys, Sam Boyle or Toby Twist, to step up. And if Santiago Garcia goes in game 1, they need one of those guys to come in game 2 and throw strikes. And I'm not sure if Oregon prefers Toby or Sam at this point, but it sure seems like it's Toby because he's got the better stuff. Anything else, Austin? What do you think about the pitching staff?
It's good. I think it's really good. I think you're going to get some innings from some weird players this weekend. I think you're going to see a Julian Hernandez or a Tanner Bradley, who I think has really, really good stuff. I think Toby Twist is going to need. I think he's the third lefty, right? You have Amont too, but Amont isn't necessarily a.
He's a different role. He's not a lefty guy. Yeah.
And if you go, five games? What's the max that they could go this weekend? 6.
I think it'd be 5. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go 5 games, I want Ian Amont starting one of those. So.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with Ian.
It's not a bad. I don't know what to do with Ian either. It's okay. He's still valuable as a guy that can eat 6 innings against a Utah Valley the second time you see them, if you have to see them twice. But he's also right to use him in the back end of a bullpen and just he's going to come in and throw strikes. Right? It's a conundrum.
It's a double-edged sword with me because I just feel like he doesn't have the stuff to compete against good competition, and I know that his track record has proven me wrong.
No, I get it. It feels a little like a powder keg. Um,
Yeah.
Love him, but I understand.
Yeah, but he throws strikes, which for a long time in April, that was not a thing that happened
Yeah.
routinely or regularly. But I still think he's really serviceable, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Oregon threw him in game one.
Yeah,
Because
I can see it.
I mean, that's what Waz has shown. He's shown that he's not afraid to throw somebody other than Grayson in game one, and they're not their number one starter, whoever that may be, and say, look, we can win this in other ways, and we're going to save him for this game and give us our best chance. But if you had to pick somebody for game one as a starter, who do you think it'll be?
I would still go with Grayson Brinson. I think if it was a team, there are teams in this tournament. If it was North Dakota State who kind of
Lucked in?
worked their way through the conference tournament, that would be a different story. But no, this is a good Utah Valley team that can hit. So I would still throw Brinsel. And I would save Ian because I think he could throw 30 pitches on Saturday and then come back Monday and throw 75.
100%. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think you throw Grayson, and I think you say Ian for the potential Colin Clark day. And I think you throw Jason Wrights in game two, and
I agree.
just kind of work around in game three where you start Colin, and you see how much he can get you, and you go from there. And
Yeah,
you just
you hope
hope
it
that
only goes 3 games, right?
yes,
You hope
yeah,
you get a Santa Barbara regional again.
yep, and you go out there, and maybe Colin Clark has a Kevin Sider performance, where he just puts the team on his back and carries him. And Clark has been, I don't have the stats in front of me, and I wish I did, but Clark has been significantly better at home than he has been on the road.
And he's also
And
just, maybe
go
it's a
ahead.
feel thing, but I think he's just
Yep.
a big game pitcher, right? Like he was really good against UCLA, even though I don't think the final numbers show it. Really solid against UCLA, and then fantastic against Oregon State.
Yep. Clark is 4-1 this year with a 2.45 ERA at home and 47 innings pitched with 46 strikeouts. Opponents are hitting 190 against him. On the road, as I wait for this to load, bars, he is 1-1 in 5 games started with a 9.43 ERA and 21 innings pitched, only 14 strikeouts. So there is a clear discrepancy, real Isaac Aon shit with Clark this year, home and away.
Is that a thing? I haven't looked at those, but it's fun to look at.
What?
The Aon
Clark?
numbers.
Oh yeah, go 2022 Isaac Aon.
Do I get
his
your
home and away splits were jarring, but as are Colin Clark's, and I don't know what that is. I don't know why. Maybe he has a really good bet at home. I don't know, but it's clear. It's apparent. My eyes have seen it this entire season. The stats show it. And maybe he's a guy who just comes out on whatever Saturday and throws 6 innings of 2-run ball and really helps the team. Because a guy like Grayson is good home or away. I know that he struggled last week against Nebraska, but Nebraska kind of felt like a team of destiny that weekend.
It was all of that together. It was the crowd. It was the game time being changed. Like it's so difficult to prepare for an entire start, and then 15 minutes before your start, they're like, "All right, well, we're not pitching this game on Friday night, but stay hot, and you might be able to pitch in 4 hours." And then, okay, here's Saturday morning. You have to pitch. It's difficult. I throw that one away completely.
And it's fine. But yeah, all right. Predictions. Go. Who's winning the regional? Or give me in order.
Oregon, Cal Poly. Gonna get weird. Utah Valley, Arizona. But I have reasoning for this because I do think, and we've talked about the experience. I do think that Utah Valley's bats are so experienced, and Arizona's pitching is so young.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's a legitimate chance that happens.
I get it. I understand. I will go chalk. I will do Oregon, Cal Poly, Arizona, Utah Valley. I'm
That's
not
not
going to get
chalk,
weird.
though.
I know it's not chalk. I had to.
Oh,
I'm just not going
I
to
was
get
gonna
weird.
say, yeah.
I'm going to talk like how we've been talking this entire podcast,
Yeah.
and go through it. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one, though. I think for those who are still listening, and thank you, we really appreciate your support here. I think for those who are going to watch this, and let's say it might be one of your first times watching Oregon baseball in the postseason, I think this Eugene Regional is going to be really offensive heavy. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of low scoring ball games, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for people who are just tuning in for the first time. And I think that this is going to be a good reminder that this program only came back in 2009. This is the fifth straight year under Mark Wazakowski that they are making the postseason. They did not make it in 2020 due to the pandemic. This is the second time under his tutelage that they are hosting a regional, first time since 2021. They are looking to go for the third straight super regional, which would set a program record. This is a good ball club. This is a good program. And that it should be a lot of fun this weekend. And I'm excited to go cover it. As soon as our credentials are approved, Austin, I put yours in. I don't know if you got an email or anything like that, but
Nothing.
that's fine.
We'll be fine.
We're there. We're going to be there. You can follow all of our coverage on duckterritory.com throughout the week and the weekend. Austin, where can they find your socials?
Everything at Otapopin, OTAPOPPIN. Yeah.
Yeah. You can
Yeah.
find all of Austin's work on duckterritory.com as well.
As well. Whenever I write.
Whenever he writes, yeah. Please make sure to follow Austin for this postseason run that Oregon is going to be on, because I might not be here for a super regional appearance. I'm taking a trip out to Italy starting next weekend or next week, excuse me. And if Oregon does win this regional and goes on to the super regionals, this guy below me, Austin, that's going to be the one you want to follow here to get all your Oregon coverage. So he's got a lot on his plate. We've got a lot on our plate this weekend for the Eugene Regional. Thank you all for listening. Please leave a 5-star review, comments, whatever you so like, in order to show us some love. But for Austin Ota, I'm Jared Mack. Thank you for listening to the Odds and Audibles podcast.